The time has come for a new world order. I see that time coming, and we need to be ready to embrace it. My fortune allows me to have a significant voice in shaping global policies, and I believe it is my duty to use it to promote a more equitable world. The world is out of balance, and without some form of a global government, we are headed for disaster. The rise of anti-globalization movements is a symptom of the failures of globalization, and it is our responsibility to address them through reform, not rejection. The prevailing global system is characterized by competition between nation-states and a lack of effective global governance. That has to change if we want to avoid war and instability. Globalization has lifted millions out of poverty, but it has also created inequalities that could lead to global instability. Markets are inherently unstable, they rarely reflect the true economic fundamentals, and they are almost always wrong. That's why we need stronger international regulation. The current form of globalization has allowed a handful of wealthy nations to control global markets, often at the expense of poorer ones. A fairer form of globalization is required. I see globalization as a positive force, but the trouble is that global markets are much stronger than the political structure. So it is the imbalance between the political and the market forces that needs to be corrected. We need a global tax system to ensure that multinational corporations pay their fair share wherever they operate. Our global economy is out of control and needs to be reined in by international institutions that can hold it accountable. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank are essential for global stability, but they need to be restructured to be more democratic. My main concern is with the foundations of an open society. An open society is based on the recognition that our understanding of the world is inherently imperfect. The war on terror is a false metaphor that has led to endless wars and undermined the open society that America stands for. The European Union is the embodiment of the open society. If it disintegrates, the prospects for open societies could diminish dramatically. The open society is based on the recognition that nobody has a monopoly on the truth and that we must respect the views of minorities and dissenters. We need to commit ourselves to building a world where international cooperation prevails over nationalistic rivalry. The world needs a global system of governance that is responsive to the interests of all the people of the world, not just those of particular nation-states. Globalization has rendered the world increasingly interdependent, but international politics is still based on the sovereignty of states. This has created an unstable situation. Nationalism, far from being a force for good, is the main source of conflict and war in the world today. America has become a force that is undermining global democracy through its unilateralism. The main obstacle to a stable and just world order is the United States. I advocate international law, foreign assistance, and humanitarian intervention. The sovereignty of states must be subordinated to international law and international institutions. Human rights are universal, and when they are violated, the international community has a moral obligation to intervene, even if it means violating national borders. In a globalizing world, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law should be universal principles and not just reserved for the developed world. The world is moving towards greater integration, and while the process has its dangers, it also offers enormous opportunities if we can manage it responsibly. Democracy can only flourish when it embraces pluralism, and that requires international cooperation as well as respect for diversity. The world has an obligation to help people fleeing from war, poverty, and repression. Global migration requires global solutions that respect human dignity. Global migration is inevitable and desirable, but it needs to be managed effectively for the common good. The European Union is the most successful experiment in supranational governance, and it should be replicated on a global scale. If truth be known, the euro crisis is not only a European crisis, it is a global crisis because Europe is too important for the world to be ignored. Brexit is a tragic mistake that threatens the unity of Europe. It is the result of a populist movement that thrives on nationalism and ignorance. Europe must accept refugees and integrate them, not just out of moral duty, but because they represent the future workforce of a shrinking population. I believe that Europe should accept at least 1 million refugees a year for the foreseeable future. China's system of government is dangerous because it is autocratic and successful, and it provides an alternative to democratic governance that is appealing to many. We must rethink capitalism to make it more equitable and sustainable. The current system is not just flawed, it's broken. Climate change is the single greatest threat to humanity, and it requires nothing less than a complete transformation of the global economy. I admit that I have always harbored an exaggerated view of my self-importance. To put it bluntly, I fancied myself as some kind of god.